Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 7 of Contend. Today, we're talking about the doctrine of creation. Now, most people think of the doctrine of creation as belief about the origins of the universe, and that is certainly part of it. But also, what we're going to see is belief in the doctrine of creation biblically has to do with how we think and feel about the stuff that still exists. Like, we still live in creation. Creation wasn't just something that happened, but it's something that we inhabit still. And so, a good doctrine of creation will make space for both of those discussions. And so, we're going to talk about creation ex nihilo, out of nothing, the goodness of creation, a few heresies, a heterodoxy, and then the question of age of the earth. And we'll see how much we actually care about that. All right, so let's get going. Grudem defines creation as that. This is his definition. God created the entire universe out of nothing. It was originally very good, and he created it to glorify himself. This is another point of departure with the Mormon faith and us. They reject the doctrine of ex nihilo. They posit a premortal existence for all things. They see creation as kind of like God reorganizing stuff that was already there. You know, Picasso was a great painter, but he worked with substance. So they reject the doctrine of ex nihilo creation, premortal existence for you and for me. In that sense, they think we share in God's eternality. But creation ex nihilo is all over the scriptures. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He didn't just reorganize. He didn't just take something and turn it into something else, but he made. John 1:3, all things were made through him. Pontus is the word, everything. Colossians 1:16, for by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. So that rules out even we'll talk about this more in anthropology later, but this idea of like a premortal existence, or this idea of reincarnation, that things are just kind of being perpetually in this cycle. But all things did not exist, and then they came into existence, besides God in himself, in the Trinity. It's also important to recognize here that God directly creates Adam and Eve. So now we're talking about like evolution, things like that, and we'll talk about in a bit about to what extent are some of these things debatable or not debatable. But God directly creates Adam and Eve. The Lord God formed the man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living creature. This also rules out the Mormon idea of premortal existence, that he was not alive and he became alive. It's not that he was pre-existent and then he took on flesh. The incarnation is about Jesus. Jesus takes on flesh. Humans don't take on flesh. They are made out of the stuff of the earth by God. Adam did not pre-exist. He became a living creature at his creation. Likewise, Adam was not born from human parents. He's not a descendant, a hominoid that was then kind of like chosen by God out of other hominoids. So Adam and Eve are directly created by God. That the significance of that we'll see even later. Now, when it talks about like the creation, there's original and enduring goodness, right? You read Genesis 1 and 2, especially Genesis 1, it's like, and God made it and it was good. God made it, it was good. God made it, it was good. Then God makes humanity, and now it's very good. So there's a very goodness to creation, but then like sin enters the world and it's marred, it's cursed, it's stained. Does the creation remain good? And I think the argument is yes. Paul writes this in 1 Timothy 4. In later times, some will depart from the faith by devoting themselves to deceitful spirits and teachings of demons, through the insincerity of liars whose consciences are seared. You go like, what is this false teaching? How bad is it? What are they saying that can be described in such demonic level A categories? Well, here's what it says. Who forbid marriage and require abstinence from foods that God created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and know the truth. For everything created by God is good, and nothing is to be rejected if it's received with thanksgiving. So in Paul's view, even after sin enters the world, there's still a fundamental goodness to the creation. The sun on your face, the food in your mouth, the hug of a family member, the joy of a conversation. These are all the goodness of creation. John Calvin called creation the theater of God's glory, that God is still showing off through his created works. He hasn't stopped showing off through his created works. So the curse is added to creation, but the creation is not in and of itself diminished. If you think about like a wonderful painting, so say like the Mona Lisa, and someone throws ink on it, it's stained, but the painting is still there. Like the good painting is still there, but now there's just stuff on top of it. The curse of sin is, like Augustine calls it, parasitical. Like it gets on it, but it doesn't. So sin is inherently non-creative. Sin is non-creative. It adds to the ugliness of something, but the thing itself remains good. And so there's a few heresies here that I want to just address. Some of them will be obvious, some will be less obvious. Materialism, pantheism or panentheism, dualism, and deism as it relates to creation. The first one is materialism. All that exists is the universe. In this sense, God is not God, but God is like an evolutionary tactic of Homo sapiens to create morals and order and a sense of meaning. So God is contained within the universe. It's an idea of fabrication. God would be not unlike an iPhone. It's something that humans have made to improve on their lives. And so we use God, but he's fundamentally non-distinct from creation. So people believe in God because it's like effective or it means something. So that's a heresy. That's not what we believe. We believe that God created the world. The next heresy is pantheism or panentheism. So this is kind of like Eastern religions where all that exists is God. This is God, that is God. This is like Buddhism, that God is the universe is God. And so nowadays people like manifest things to the universe or believe in the universe. A lot of people talk about God, and what they mean is like some kind of non-personal force that they can like throw affirmations out or manifestations out at it, and then it kind of comes back. This kind of belief in karma, that the way the universe works is to organize itself according to people's desires, things like that. And so in this view, like in Buddhism, the goal of life is to like dissolve into the great oneness of being, to become one with the God. And so achieving nirvana is like the erasure of the self, and you become connected to the whole. And so pantheism is God is everything or God is everywhere, but God is essentially the universe. It's really kind of in the Western culture popularized by Baruch Spinoza, the Jewish, but not actually, a philosopher. And then panentheism is like the God is in everything. This is kind of more like the hippy-dippy New Age spirituality stuff, that like God is this is kind of the spiritual, not religious emphasis of things. It ends up being pantheism or panentheism, but kind of God is your breath. God is your mind. God is any sense of peace. God is everything. And so that's not true. It's kind of like just a spiritualized, charged, kind of hippie charged version of materialism. Next is a heresy called dualism, which is that God and the universe have eternally existed, and they kind of go on existing. And every now and then God kind of dips down, and the universe dips down, but it's kind of like a dual existence, that God is up here, the world's down here. God like operates in the spiritual realm maybe, but the universe operates on the physical realm, and they kind of go on each other for all time. Again, this is popularized in certain Western thinkers like Leibniz, the rationalist. Descartes was close to there. This idea that the spirit and the body kind of coexist but don't really overlap much. Again, there's a sense in which that kind of is flirting with certain like expressions of Mormonism, like the spirit realm and the physical realm. These things are unconnected, besides through like coincidence. A subcategory of dualism that's a heresy is called Manichaeism. This is like yin yang type stuff, that there's the universe which exists, and then there's like this eternal battle between God and evil, or good and evil. So like the eternal force of good against the eternal force of evil, the balance, that these things kind of balance and drive history forward, that God is acting on the universe, but so is evil, and like who will win in the end? It's kind of like the battle between these equal and opposite forces, yin and yang. Some people tend to think about that like that, kind of like even in some of C.S. Lewis's works, like if you're uninformed, you could read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and think like, oh, the witch and Aslan are kind of like these equals who kind of are claiming and counterclaiming land, and they're battling it out through a duel of wits to some degree. And so like the gap between God and evil, like really evil is part of the universe. Evil is Satan and his demons are created beings. And so we're actually more like Satan than we are like God, because we're creatures. Then it's the fact to say that Satan is like God more than we're like God. So Satan and all things that do evil are creatures. The evil spirits are not like co-equal with God in any capacity. It's Manichaeism. Another one is deism. This is like really popular in universalism. This is popular at the founding of America, that God created the world and he just pieced out. Like God established this, like, you think about like flicking the dominoes. He set up all the dominoes, flicked it, and then pieced out. God's no longer involved, no longer active. What will be, will be. This is kind of like another version of like fatalism or determinism, that the ordering of events has already happened. God's no longer personally active. This is God being all transcendent and not immanent. He's far off, uninterested, absentee father. In contrast, so that's the last heresy. Here's the biblical view, is a contingent creation. So God created and he goes on sustaining that creation, still involved in it, working in it. That he upholds the universe by the word of his power. So providence and creation really go kind of hand in hand. God created all things and he sustains all things. He's absolutely over it, but he's still intimately involved with it. Creation is contingent and dependent on the creator God, but there are fundamentally two hierarchies of being. There is the uncreated and the created. Some have called it twoism versus oneism, that Christians believe in twoism. There's two types of things: created things, uncreated God. And there's the gap between that is infinite, but nonetheless, the uncreated God continues to work on the creation. So what we believe in right now, just like what we believe in the beginning, is a creation contingent on the creator's power and authority and sustaining presence. Now, this brings me to what I'd call a heterodoxy, not necessarily a heresy, but that's the idea of theistic evolution. This idea that God created these kind of like unevolved world, and then he oversaw the evolutionary process. And Grudem lists out 6 in Bible doctrine ways that theistic evolution contradicts the Genesis account. In his systematic theology, longer one, he lists out 12 ways. J.P. Moreland has a longer book critiquing theistic evolution. I do think it's very wrong. I'm not really totally willing to call it heresy, which is like level A wrong. Heterodoxy would be like level B wrong. So I called it heterodoxy, theistic evolution. Most basically, I believe it's a huge problem because of what it does to your view of Christ as the substitute who dies for sin. So in Romans 5:12-14. So theistic evolution, again, is a view that it kind of buys wholesale the neo-Darwinist account of the development of species through macroevolutionary process, through random genetic mutation, and through natural selection. And so humans came about by that process over billions of years. And there's a lot of reasons why people might not believe that, like the fact that genetic mutations have a really hard time coming out of nothing. And so like most of them are fatal and flawed. And I think Grudem does a great job diving into that. But I just want you to know why I think the evolutionary account is incompatible with the biblical account to some degree. Obviously, I think there's like development within species. Whether you see like new species developing in the fossil record, I still don't think you see it. But that to me feels like not as important as what I see in Romans 5. So this is Paul's view. Just as sin came into the world through one man and death through sin. So if you buy the evolutionary theistic account or theistic evolution account, you think that death did not come into the world through sin. You think that death came into the world through God's design. So already theistic evolution contradicts this. And so death spread from all men because all sinned. For sin indeed was in the world before the law was given, but sin was not counted where there's no law. Yet death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over those who are sinning, was not like the transgressions of Adam, who became a type of the one who is to come. So just as sin came in the world through one man, salvation comes into the world through the one man, Jesus Christ. And so in Paul's thinking, part of the reason the atonement works is because you have the one man, Adam, from whom sin emanated all the way down, but then you have the one man, Jesus, for whom all are in him, life radiates on down. And so I think theistic evolution gives you a huge problem on the theory of the fact that Jesus died for sins, on issues of the atonement. It contradicts a whole chunk of scripture. That being said, Grudem comes down in what may be a surprising place for you. I had him as a teacher, so it didn't surprise me when I reread it. But there's really kind of two general views that I think are acceptable. One is old earth, one is young earth. The young earth view would say that the earth is 10 to 20,000 years old. Some would say as young as 6,000 years old, but this is kind of the view that the mature creationism view is that just like God created Adam and Eve looking like adults, so also he creates the universe looking like adults. And there's the old earth view, which is that the earth is 4.5 billion years old. and the universe is 13.8 billion years old. And Grudem gets there by kind of talking about the size of the universe and would God create rays of light that look like they've been coming from 13 billion years away, and all this kind of like scientific evidence I'd point to 13.8 billion years, while kind of looking at what exactly is the goal of Genesis 1 through 11. And what he says is, I don't think the Bible tells us or intends to tell us the age of the earth or the age of the universe. So here at Ironwood Church, the age of the earth is an open-handed issue. I do think the theistic evolution view is a pretty big error, but I could see how, depending on how you view like a day of the earth is like 1,000 years, the day age theory, things like that, whether it's like a forming and a filling view of Genesis 1 through 11 that Grudem introduces us to, those are debatable topics. So I don't really care much about the age of the earth. I'm probably like 70-30, old earth versus young earth. If you have a really strong view and that makes you really mad, that's totally fine with me. So that's a doctrine of creation. We live in it and we thank God for doing it. He did it. I think he did it directly. He did it by the word of his power. And I think we live in the goodness of creation, even though it's stained by sin. Thanks so much for tuning in. Keep on reading, keep on studying, keep on praying, keep on discussing with your friends and family. Part of the way that we celebrate God's creation is by enjoying conversation with one another. And so go on doing that. We'll see you next week.